Today's podcast is brought to you by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. When it comes to home and auto insurance, it's important to have the right coverage from a company and an agent you can trust. Someone who will help you properly protect the people and things you love the most. So if the unexpected happens, you and your family can rest insured. To request a free quote, find your local KFB insurance agent at mykfbagent.com. Kentucky Farm Bureau, big on commitment. Welcome to Kentucky Farm Bureau News, the podcast edition. I'm Tim Thornberry, editor of the Kentucky Farm Bureau News magazine. Today our guest is David Salmonsen, who is the Senior Director of Governmental Relations with the American Farm Bureau Federation. And we'll be discussing ag exports and the trade deficit we're facing in the agriculture industry. First off, let's explain a little bit about ag exports. Certainly we can say how important they are to our farm families. But we're at a stage that's sort of, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit new ground for us. Is that a good way to put it?
Yes, it is. We almost always have a surplus in agricultural trade, you may say. We almost always have more exports by dollar value than we have imports. But the last year or so and forecast for this year, that's turned around in a fairly big way. Our export values have declined. We were almost about $200 billion in exports 2 years ago, $175 billion last year, and forecast for about $170 billion this year. Whereas our imports, which of course we have a lot of agriculture and food imports also, have now passed our export values, and for 2024 are forecasted about $200 billion. So we've got about a $30 billion gap, again, which is widening, and we're not really used to that. And I certainly think it's a signal for concern and something that people should be interested in trying to figure out why, and also take action to get us back on the right path to increase our exports.
Dave, I guess first I would ask the why question. What are some of the reasons we found ourselves in this position? Or is there any one thing or just a lot of different things?
There's a couple of things. You can look and say, well, our exports, where are we with exports? Well, we're facing increasing competition. And as farmers everywhere know, for many commodities, we've got some lower prices. And the nice way of putting it is say prices are softening, but prices for a lot of commodities are down from where they were a year or two ago. So, of course, the export values are a little less due to that. We've also got competition. Think of our largest market for the last many years has been China. And at one point, we were upwards of about $35 billion a year in ag exports to China. Last year, we were at $30 billion. The forecast for this year is about $28.5 billion. And that's just not all because U.S. ag product prices are a little less. But a lot of it is because China's diversifying their markets. They had the experience of going through the trade war back in 2018 and 19, and they're looking to buy from others. And also, the last year or two, you've had better weather in South America. They're kind of coming out of their many years of drought. They're producing more crops at a lower prices, and China's buying more Brazilian and Argentinian soybeans and corn than they were a few years ago. So the U.S. has competition in some of our major markets. And on the other side, our imports are growing. We have, for the last 15 years or so, had steady increases in imports, primarily and especially when you think of things that are competing. Of course, we always have imports of coffee and tea and tropical fruits and vegetables, things like that the U.S. doesn't produce, but that U.S. consumers, all of us, like. But we're really thinking more about the products that are compete with U.S. production. A lot of fruits and vegetables, of course, different times of the year. A lot of them come in from Mexico, but products that are also competing with us when we're growing them. Think of, again, you think of tomatoes or peppers and stuff from Mexico that come in. You think of products from Canada, many products from Canada that come at the same time we're producing that are competing with us. That's part of the market, but it does raise concerns, and certainly among growers who see their prices decline at the few months of the year when they have product to sell. So these are issues of concern. We have, of course, a consumer and a retail food establishment that wants to provide fresh products to U.S. families year-round. We all enjoy them, but that means more imports when the U.S. isn't able to produce those. So we've got a lot of issues coming together. Some will say we've had a higher value of the dollar that makes our exports a little less competitive. That's part of it. But also at the time, and that's a little bit of the why. Now that we kind of established some of that, but what can we do to turn this around and expand opportunities for U.S. agricultural producers in the export markets? That's what we need to keep to work on next.
Mm-hmm. Dave, one thing, I don't know that this is part of the why, but, we are just seeing some census numbers from 2022. In our state alone, we've, at least over the last 10 years, we see quite a drop in the number of farms out there, about 16%. And so does that have anything to do with the fact that the number of people that are out there farming continues to shrink?
I think that may have a bit of an impact on it when you talk bigly about amount to sell and places to sell. But then when you have fewer farmers out there, do you having less opportunity for consumers to be buying directly from farms, to have that integration or that attachment with local agriculture, local production, so that they're looking more to imports than they would be locally? That could be a part of it. That could be a part of the reason why imported products may be filling a void there where our U.S. production isn't as much as it was in certain parts of the country, and for certain products are as widely available as perhaps it once was. So, yeah, that could be a part of it.
Dave, what about turning this ship around? Is there some things out there that we could do that could turn this thing around, or at least lessen it a bit?
Well, I think there is, traditionally, and what has worked for all these many decades. You have to remember, since the 90s, say the world opened up, right? You had the fall of the Soviet Union. You had China open up to the world. We had a world market that we never had before. And our U.S. ag exports, boy, since the early 2000s have gone from about $40 billion a year, again, went up to almost $200 billion a year. We just were exporting so much, and the world wanted it. The world was the market. Well, we've seen a bit, I don't say the world is closing. The markets are there, maybe more competition. We've seen a little bit more changing in the what they call the strategic environment. We all know what's going on with China. Of course, the war in Ukraine. We have some bumps in the road to trade now, don't we? But I think what we've also let go by is the administration and the Congress that were strongly behind new trade agreements, trying to do new opportunities, knock down and work with other countries to reduce their barriers to trade, whether it was through one-on-one trade agreements like we've had in the past, and we did the one with South Korea and Panama and Colombia. We did Australia. We did many countries years ago. Of course, we had the NAFTA, which turned into the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which lowered tariffs, got rid of some non-tariff, what they call standards barriers, and those were negotiated away and reduced either right away or over time. And our trade with those countries that we have agreements with has increased a lot in a lot of areas, but especially in agricultural product exports. So we've seen the growth there. And so those work. But now we're in a different world, it seems, on trade. People are really skeptical about the benefits, about the impacts it may have in domestic U.S. for different sectors, manufacturing and others, and less desirous of moving ahead with new trade agreements. So we think we need to work to turn that around, that there are opportunities out there that we see. We think we could do trade agreements more like in the Indo-Pacific. Now, this administration currently has the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, but it's not really a tariff-reducing, standard-setting body. It's about relationships, about working together on issues, which is fine, but it's not a traditional trade agreement that would go through Congress and be signed into law by the president. So it's not quite as effective in trying to expand opportunities for trade for U.S. farmers and ranchers. And that's what we think we need to get back to. It's hard work. We know it's hard work. But I think we know that achieves results. So there's a lot of different ways to work to try to improve trade, to try to knock down this ag trade deficit, get us back on the positive side. But we certainly have to do the hard work, engage in the trade negotiations, look at what we're doing with imports. There's something we can do. I know USDA is working on this. There's been a lot of discussion. What can they do to help along, and the industry help itself domestically, especially the fruit and vegetable industry, to make their products more in demand across the U.S. So these are a lot of different areas to work on this, but I think we have to take a hard look at what we want our trade future to be and how we get to expanding our export markets.
Dave, as our members are advocates, what message would you recommend that they take to lawmakers and to people in positions that can help turn this thing around, move some other things forward? What do our members say?
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of chance to talk with various of our Farm Bureau members who've been coming to Washington so far this year to meet with their lawmakers, meet with the officials of the administration, and our message has been explain to them or tell them, lawmakers, and engage in that discussion of why trade has been important. Why about 20% of everything we produce in agriculture in this country finds an export market. And we know from those of us who were around long enough to remember when we didn't have those export markets, what surpluses did to prices. A lot of prices farmers receive for a lot of products, a lot of that comes from export markets. We want that outlet. We don't want to have to deal with surpluses that just hang around and depress prices. So that has always been the basic reason. The other reason, of course, producing for exports is just another really good business outlet for people. So I think you just need to talk about that as an issue that's important to farmers and ranchers, and let the lawmakers, let the officials that they might meet with at the Department of Agriculture, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative know that this is still a critical issue for U.S. farmers and ranchers, continuing issue, and it's not one-sided. We have seen that there are benefits to trade. The U.S. is a trading nation. We move our products around the world. We bring in products from around the world, and we want to be a part of that. That ends up on the plus side for agriculture.
Dave, one more question, and I think this requires your crystal ball. Are we at a new place with this? Is it conceivable to think that we could ever go back to the heyday of exporting much more than we import, or is it just a different day now? We have to adjust to that, make some, I don't want to say concessions, but just understand it maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I think there are some different challenges. When you get back to the whole issue, we started with the ag trade deficit. They were always fairly close. You know, we always have imported, we've always exported, but we were always doing more with exports than we were with imports. We prided ourselves on that. And we needed to do that because we're a growing agriculture. What we don't want is to limit our productivity. You know, that's been a part of what we've talked about with all these issues on sustainability and climate, and why we have programs that are voluntary, incentive-based, but don't limit our productivity, in contrast to what the European Union is doing, which is trying to limit the productivity of their farmers to achieve climate goals. And we can see from the press how they're reacting to that. They've been protesting in the streets of how they don't want to be cut back. They need to produce. Well, we need to produce in the U.S. to have successful businesses. And I think we need to have our export markets and trade continue to be a big part of that. So I don't think that's really changed. Now, has the world changed a little bit? Are we other countries maybe not as receptive as they once were? Yeah, I think that's probably true. The geopolitical world has moved along. We may be in a world with some more conflict than we had 15 or 20 years ago, but that doesn't mean we don't engage in trying to do better on the economic side. So I think we can still get there. We can still have growing trade, growing export markets, which will be certainly an important part of every one's in agriculture, every producer's business plan going forward. You can hopefully work forward and try to do more with markets. It's hard to plan for natural disasters or droughts or things like that affecting other countries, but we certainly want to work toward the place where the agriculture industry, government agencies are working together so that we have a good trade future.
Dave, thank you so much today for joining us here on the podcast and talking to our members about ag exports. We appreciate your help as always.
It's always fun to visit and talk about trade. Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and to hear more KFB content from a variety of our guests and speakers, please subscribe to this channel. Thanks, and I hope each of you have a great day.